Japan recorded 727,277 births in 2023. That is the lowest number since records began in 1899. But the number that should stop every investor and policymaker cold is this. Japan's fertility rate has now fallen to 1.20. The replacement level is 2.07. That gap is not a warning signal. It is an already locked structural outcome, and the economic consequences are now a matter of arithmetic, not debate. The scale of what is coming requires a human frame to be understood. Japan's population is projected to fall from 125 million today to 63 million by 2100. Japan's population is projected to fall from 125 million today to 63 million by 2100. That is a loss of 62 million people. Erase Spain, erase Portugal, combine them. That is what disappears from Japan's economy, tax base, labor force, and consumer market over the next 75 years. Meanwhile, 29.1% of Japan's current population is already 65 or older, the highest proportion of any nation on Earth. These are not forecasts. These are current statistics. Japan now faces 3 possible futures, and only one of them is actually being pursued. Japan now faces 3 possible futures, and only one of them is actually being pursued. Scenario A is mass immigration. To maintain a working-age population of 60 million through 2060, Japan needs 650,000 net migrants annually. It currently accepts 150,000. This pathway preserves GDP at 550 to 600 trillion yen and prevents nominal economic contraction. The political feasibility rating is 2 out of 10. The LDP's rural elderly base polls at 65 to 72% opposition to large-scale immigration. Japan accepts 0.3% of asylum applicants. This scenario requires a political revolution that shows no signs of beginning. Scenario B is fertility recovery. The government's official target is a TFR of 1.80 by 2040. Reaching it requires raising fertility spending from 2.0% of GDP to 4.5%, Sweden's level, plus structurally reducing working hours for parents by 40%. Japan's 2023 childcare package allocated 3.5 trillion yen annually. The evidence says 4 times that amount is necessary. Political feasibility, 4 out of 10. Popular in surveys, blocked in implementation. Even full success only slows decline to 95 million by 2060. Scenario C is managed decline. This is the de facto current policy. GDP contracts to 350 to 400 trillion yen by 2060, but per capita GDP is potentially preserved through automation. Japan already leads the world in robot density at 399 units per 10,000 workers. The political feasibility is 7 out of 10 because it requires doing almost nothing differently. The long-term structural risk is the highest of all 3 paths. The fiscal mathematics underneath all 3 scenarios are what the government calls future adjustments. Here is what that phrase actually means. Social security spending is currently 134 trillion yen, roughly 24% of GDP. By 2060, it hits 215 trillion yen, 38.7% of GDP, while the working age population has shrunk to 45 million. The tax burden per working adult must rise 234% by 2100 simply to maintain current benefit levels before touching the existing debt load of 263% of GDP. The Government Pension Investment Fund manages 225 trillion yen. Under the baseline scenario, reserves are exhausted by 2051. Under pessimistic fertility assumptions, that breaking point arrives in 2038. The Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare's own 2024 actuarial report quietly assumes benefit cuts of 20% to 30% will be implemented. That is what future adjustments means. 3 investment themes emerge from this data with high conviction. 3 investment themes emerge from this data with high conviction. First, industrial automation. Japan's automation penetration must rise 40% by 2040. FENUC, Keyence, and Yaskawa operate in a market projected to grow from 2.8 trillion to 5.2 trillion yen by 2035. Second, Tokyo concentration. the capital loses only 7.2% of its population by 2050, while rural prefectures like Akita lose nearly half. Tokyo-focused REITs structurally outperform national indices. Third, the silver premium. Japanese households hold 1.4 quadrillion yen in financial assets, with over 60% controlled by those 65 and older. Wealthy retirees create durable premiumization demand in healthcare, travel, and financial services. Avoid regional banks serving collapsing municipalities. Avoid regional banks serving collapsing municipalities, suburban retail outside the three major metros, and new residential construction in a market already carrying 8.49 million vacant homes. Here is the framework to carry forward. Japan is not in a demographic crisis. It is in a demographic transition with three possible trajectories, only one of which its government is actually executing. And that one accepts a smaller but potentially functional economy. The investors who outperform will not be the ones who bet on Japan's reversal.